Hey there. Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, June 27th. We're almost done with the second quarter of the year, believe it or not. I guess that means we're almost halfway there, right? Pretty crazy. Welcome to the Dev Talk Show. I'm here with my co-host, Rich. That's really easy for me to say. I'm here with my co-host, Rich Ross. How are you doing today this morning, Rich?
Doing well, Chris. How are you?
Okay, I guess. I mean, look, there's a reason that I'm not a news anchor or or anything like that. I don't even have a teleprompter. So, you know,
I do have one, and they're kind of fun, but I don't. It's not connected in this setup here. But I do. I have one of those Elgato prompters, and I hear there's a larger one coming out, which would be great because the one I have is too small. But that's kind of why I pulled it out. But
okay, all right. Well, welcome everybody. We don't have a long show today because it's we're already a little bit like about 10 past 8 here on the U.S. East Coast, which has gratefully cooled down significantly. At least I feel like it's 25, 30 degrees cooler than it was yesterday. So that's helpful. Today we're going to get into things pretty quickly. If you were with us last time, we have been taking inspiration from schema.org and their event type. And so I believe, Rich, we have some updates that they may not be on the public source control, but I think you have a branch that you're working on.
Yes.
Where we're starting to get those incorporated and see if maybe we can start filling them out from the front end. So we'll go ahead and that go in there. All right. So right now, what we're looking at is you created this markdown document. It's a table of basically everything you saw in the event type on schema.org, but then there's an additional column to say whether or not we're going to select whether or not we're going to use that piece.
Yes. Yeah. So we got the included field here. Whoops, wrong way. And then we have just basically a Boolean true false. And then what I did in the meantime is, let's see. So I asked Copilot to take a look at the markdown file, and you can see what that looks like a little better when I show the preview version. And we've got that column there with included. So let's take the included information and use that to add additional fields or make sure the fields exist for all of the properties that we have listed here in the meeting class. So that's what I was asking it over here. And it actually ran through and said, well, hey, we've got a bunch of fields. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. It's good this way. So we actually saying that, hey, we've got a bunch of fields that already exist. And those are essentially listed here. Those are the ones that we've been adding and using so far. But then, hey, there's all of these fields here that are in the MD document that aren't in your class yet. So I'm going to go ahead and add them. And that's what it did. So if we go back to, I think it's in core, data meeting. So there's our meeting object. You can see it actually gave us a little bit of a commentary there that, hey, these are all those schema.org properties. And then kind of run down through here. So they're not exactly typed the way I think we want. It's kind of using what came out of schema.org essentially, but about certainly is a string, but attendees ultimately will be a collection of, ultimately attendee, which doesn't exist yet. So those are some of the things that we've got to kind of continue on and do. And I think it's for today, I think what we want to do is, while this is here and we can certainly bring it and check it in, I think what we want to do is, see about updating the entry form so that we can capture some of the important information that we need to get and have that, have it be able to write that record out to Cosmo DB for us.
Okay. All right. First, let me say good evening to Alan, who we're so grateful joins us a lot. And I believe, although I'm not 100% sure, and believe me, not asking, this is not asking for location or anything, but I'm pretty sure it's after like 10 p.m. on a Friday evening out where Alan is. I just think that's the part of the world, and so that's pretty cool to join us. So what's interesting, Rich, and I would really love for people who are watching, whether you're, I don't, it's fine if you're watching now, in the future, and we're just a few minutes in. So hopefully, I think if I say this now near the beginning, is, you're using GitHub Copilot chat and the agent mode, where it not only answers questions and has a conversation with you, it will act on your behalf, right? It'll actually do work in your project, and more than just your project. I think it'll do work. We've tried to have it, do work for us on GitHub and so on. We at Philly.net, which, the whole reason why this app is being created is to help manage the Philly.net user group, which is the local user developer group here in the Philadelphia region. And we just had a GitHub Copilot bootcamp night, and I'm going to have to get into the comments here our notes on that, because it's got pointers to labs and everything. So I actually will work on that while I'm talking here. We took, I've got a bunch of notes and everything for that meetup, and it covered using GitHub Codespaces. It covered using GitHub Copilot chat, like we're doing now, and we had a full house.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go ahead and eat a little crow in that I was surprised. I didn't. It's not that I didn't think people would show up. I was just surprised at the interest level. Seemed really high in what I think can be derided as vibe coding.
Yeah.
Both derided and embraced. I feel like right now that term is being used by both fans of interacting with large language models and chat agents and so on, and it's also being used by those who aren't happy about it, and so it's like, depending on who you are, it's either positive, negative, in between,
Right.
which is not, I think, what we're trying to do. Instead, it's how do we use these tools to be more productive. And I was surprised in it. And so what I want to ask the audience, I don't care when you're watching, please leave us comments on how you are using these tools. Are you using them at all? What do you think about them? The conversation doesn't have to be mean. It can just be honest about, like, if you're a working professional in this industry, or if you're brand new to it, we might have some wildly different opinions, and it could be interesting to talk about those on a show where we're kind of trying to figure out how do we use things at work. So in any case, I thought it was interesting that I believe what I'm getting out of the chat that I'm seeing on the right is you took that markdown document and you said to it, so now that I've decided what I want in my model, can you just help me accomplish the task?
Yeah, exactly. And it certainly could have been something I did, but that's a lot of back and forth transcription. Maybe I copy and I paste it from the markdown into there to get the names right or what have you. But that's a relatively straightforward task to modify a class based off of the documentation and have that be something that is, given over to something like Copilot to go ahead and do. I will say, just in commenting on the meeting that we had, not only was the attendance quite large, but I've actually seen at least 2, possibly 3 LinkedIn articles or LinkedIn posts relating to that, and how much people were getting out of that content, and the ability to just have an open and honest conversation around how Copilot is working for everyone. And some of the, there were some hiccups and some gotchas as you go through with any demo, and just kind of having people who've been using it for a while talk through it. So I think that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I wasn't really trying to interrupt. Alan added, I've hated it till now. MCP, Model Context Protocol, is the difference as it opens the black box and helps decrease the hallucination. And that's something I think I want to explore, even adding support to that, to this app. Clearly we're trying to get through some early important features that to make it usable. And then after that, I mean, there's some specifics that I think would be really neat.
Mhm.
But you know what was interesting about it, and what makes I'm beginning to start to understand some of the dissonance, like some of the things that makes me uncomfortable, is that I can use the same prompt 3 times, and I might get 3 related, similar, and distinctions without many differences, but still different answers.
Mhm.
And I think that makes a developer uncomfortable. We've spent our entire careers and lives with computers and programming and what we do being very deterministic.
Yeah.
Um, I would say exceptions to that might be like you're building games or something. And even then, we rely on simple things like random number generators, which, even though it might introduce some randomness, we understand the randomness is still very deterministic, and it's very similar to rolling a die. It's something your brains can wrap your head around. It doesn't bother you.
Mhm.
But then when I watched our good friend Rob Kaiser leading folks through using GitHub Copilot in the lab, he flat out admitted up front, every time I do this, it produces like classes and structure and methods, and they all work, but they might be a little different than the last time.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure what you're going to get. And for it to have to be able to stand up there and say, I don't know, where in the past, our hands-on labs would very much be like, okay, everyone, copy this code, put this here, see how it works. We're all the same. Everybody's the same. Everything's great. Yay. And that's taking some getting used to.
Yeah. It certainly makes a lab very interesting, right?
Oh,
Because
gosh.
it doesn't matter how many times you prepare.
Yeah, right. So in any case, we can see in our data model here, there's a lot of
Mhm.
new um, uh, properties. I love that you pointed out how attendees will end up being a type of its own, I suppose an entity of its own. But right now, I think what you're saying is, to get the ball rolling, let's just use a string, especially because the UI we have to be updated isn't using this yet. I believe. It doesn't sound like it to me, because right now we're entering meetings, we're not RSVPing to them.
Yep. Exactly. Which is something we definitely want to do. I mean, I think we
Yeah,
have to think about what that means on the user side and
right.
how much of that information we're going to store here, because we don't need to store the whole attendee record. We probably just need the ID and maybe their first and last name. So that as we think about this, as we start to bring that information together on a page, that might be the things that you want to have there. And that link obviously might take you back to the ID to show the full information about the person, or a public view of theirs. So we've got some public private things to maybe think about when we think about attendees too, right? What data would I want to share versus not share? I don't know. I'm just thinking through as we start to go down that path. So we've got our application here. We've got our meetings class. I just put that basic to-do reminder that, hey, we've got to update that at some point. But I think what we want to do here is let's just do this. Run into bug. Cool. And I've got this set up. I've got my essentially a launch settings that launches my app host. So it's because this is an Aspire application. So we want to make sure that even though we're in Visual Studio Code, it's going to go ahead and use the Aspire components and build up our
Right.
application the right way. So that gets us to here. This time I have my Docker up and running. So all of my Cosmo containers lined up. I can go to the Data Explorer, and we can see here that when I did some of the testing of that model, I actually have some additional fields that are added inside of this particular item that we've got here. So the idea of this, things like audience and duration and keywords and location attendees, they're all got populated inside of this this new version of our meeting object. So that's a good sign, right? Didn't have to do anything else other than put those there. The problem is, as you can see, can I zoom in on that? Yeah, a little bit. So you can see here, they're actually all blank, or many of them are blank. And that we need to figure out some way to do, or to get those things in there. So if we go here, which is our application, and we go to meetings, panicked there a minute because I didn't see anything. But
Well,
it's
I
pretty
think
much,
we have some a UI issue to deal with in that, and we might have talked about this on the show, or I don't remember if we talked about it offline, where it first says no meetings to display while it's fetching them. And so, I always have that moment too, where I go, okay, is it connected? Is it working? So I feel like we can deal with that. So anyways, right, we're displaying a meetup here. And
it's got
there's
some.
other information that we think we want to add to this, right? So
Yeah, we got it very bare bones to get to work through the API and connecting to data
yep.
and those kind of things. So if we come here, we've got our add meeting, and maybe we might want to go ahead and put some components or put some additional properties in there. So if we go back to this area, let me make a little bit of screen real estate in here. Let's get rid of that. Nope, sorry, that way. And can I get rid of this tilde that? Sorry. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So now we've got our meeting object. Just kind of scrolling through and thinking through, well, what might be the, so we might want to include like our event status here. We might want to include a space for keywords, definitely a space for location. And let's see, all of that, when we think about displaying that all resides in the orbital.web application, and specifically in our pages and our meetings rager page. So if I bring that up, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a new Copilot window, and I've got meetings razor there. I want to add additional context because I want to be able to bring in not only the razor page, but actually the class that's got the meeting page, or that has the meeting CS with all the properties, and then be able to ask Copilot. See, I'm in full screen here. This might work. Let's try it. Nope, go away. That one. Morning, Copilot. Let's edit the meetings.razor page by including some additional properties from the meeting.cs class. Let's bring in the location and keywords and what's the other one? Let's just go with that for now. All right. So what I've asked it to do is basically go ahead and take those items, and let's see if we can what kind of changes it can make. Because if you go back, kind of when we first created that page, it was actually a Copilot that had gone through and created that original look and feel for that page. So it's analyzing the current Razor page, so it's going through and saying, well, what's there, what isn't there, and let's see, doing a couple passes. So it's going to modify the trigger or toggle add meeting form method to reset the keywords text field. Okay, that sounds fair. Handling the valid submit. Oh, the valid handle valid submit method. So making sure that all the validation checks out before moving on. And it gives a summary of all the changes, which is essentially all right there. You want me to make any additional changes for now? And I think we've got a location property, we've got the keywords property with two things we asked for. So let's go ahead and keep this. And one of the things I like to do when I go ahead and keep those things is move this out of the way. Let's go back to here and do it. Right, so we've got a way of basically committing, or I'm sorry, well, we're just doing a regular commit, but I've got a way to basically roll back if we go through and do this and it doesn't work. So it's a good kind of habit to get into, to be able to have that there. So now that we've got it, and this is all still running, so let's go see. So it might not have the hot reload going. I might have to reset that.
Is that, here's what I'm wondering, is that gonna, well,
Go ahead.
I think go ahead and try it. I'm wondering how well it's gonna work in a Blazor WASM standalone app, but I forget now. I have to admit that hot reload's been an adventure. I think it's something we all want.
Yeah. And I actually just did a reset of the or a restart of the
Oh yeah, you
application.
restarted the app. Okay.
So that'll be the easiest way. All of that is there. Here's the page. Meetings, add a new meeting. Cool. And you see here we actually have a location.
Okay.
Which we can think how we want to display that, do that, maybe maybe that location we want to be able to include a map button to it in the future. Or some way to navigate off to a map. So does this really need to be a full address kind of thing, or can we do something like like we typically do for 45 Liberty, which is where we are.
I think
so an address like that.
There's definitely feature UI to think through here, and probably if you're running a meetup, you would have a couple default, one or maybe a small handful of default locations that it'd be really nice if they were just there to just grab, but then the ability to say, nope, we're going somewhere else. And,
and that gets to something we kind of haven't talked about yet, which is all of these meetings sit under the umbrella of some kind of a community group. So that community group might define a core set of locations that they typically hold their meetings at, right?
Yep.
So
seems like there's a lot of administrative features that would be nice, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're very focused on, hey, it's a meeting, we got to get people at the meeting, but there's more to it than just that. So we could my next meeting, long thing, no one reads, right? And then that, and then comma, let's, obviously we're going to have .NET. And, yes, they are, well, the comma separated, but think of there are, I guess it's like a list, not a list box, but a collection box. Like you usually type those things in and they become an object in and of themselves. You get a little X there to get rid of them. So something along those lines.
I see that on YouTube. I see that, I think maybe even on, I'm trying to think where else I see it, where as you hit the comma or whatever the separator is, it turns it into its own object that's even got a little X to delete. I wonder if that's like super friendly on mobile. I haven't even thought about that because, I mean, it's nice on desktop, which I have to admit is probably where I do a lot of this kind of work. But, the other thing to think about is a lot of this usability, at least I think in part comes from the fact that on mobile screens, designers are always trying to take away so that you have space to work. That frustrates the heck out of me sometimes, where I say, I don't know where the UI went. Where did it go? Right. But I have to admit, sometimes I have to tell myself, like, maybe I need to look at it both ways. So in any case, all right. So you've added a couple things there.
Right. So we got that. We got those in there. And then, so let's see. This control, which does kind of work for meetings or for setting times and things. So let's do that. Let's do 30. Let's do PM, right? And then.
So I'll tell you what I've wanted to do, which I think we might be able to do quickly, is when you set the start time, I want it to update the end time.
Oh.
And what's interesting about that is that's a little bit of Blazor, is creating a method that we bind to run after start time is updated.
Okay, we can do that. So let's get rid of that. So now we've got two meetings here.
Let me see if I can, while you're doing what you're doing, let me see if I can connect to the live share again.
Okay.
Because I had some trouble with it this morning, which is to say I'm not connected. That's just, that's just the truth. So let me try while you're working there.
Yep. So I'm gonna do what I typically do is, even though we do have a good conversation going there and it seems to be working, let's get rid of that. Let's bring this in. We want the meetings Razor page, and let's see how well it understands doing this in Blazor, because that can be kind of it is one of the newer languages, and depending on the model we use, it may or may not be trained into that, or at least have a good bit of foundation. Not all the models are trained against certain languages. Hey, Chris is here.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
No, go ahead. I'm not going to touch anything.
So I was just going to ask Copilot to do the suggestion you just had.
It's up to you.
Unless you want to do that yourself.
I think for me, it's that I think this is a good opportunity. So, listen, for an app using Blazor, it's been a while since we've talked about Blazor.
Yeah.
So, it says it's joined, but it didn't show me it's not showing me anything. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on with me.
It says you're here.
I know, but my Solution Explorer shows nothing. So, it's okay.
Yeah, because I try and focus on you and I get nothing.
Yep. I don't know why. I don't know what kind of issues that I'm having. I might try switching over to code. So if you want to ask Copilot, that's fine. But I actually kind of know what we would do.
Okay.
I just don't know how easy it would be to walk through. So
try it again over on code, and if that doesn't work, then we can, maybe we walk through it together, since you know what we want to do.
Yeah.
Let me just close this up and make some room here.
Sorry about this delay here. I don't know. I am having a heck of a time. But basically, if you go down to, if you open meetings.razor, and which right now our form to add a meeting is not a component, which is also, I just, to be honest, just haven't thought about. If you go in there and find the start time input date, then that's the first place that we would go. Live share.
Yeah, let's stop it, because then it gets rid of all those red things. Let's go. Cool.
Oh, I see.
That's the validation stuff. Here we go. Let's see. Let me drop that and bring it back in.
Join a session, finally.
All right. It seems to be better. Okay. So here's our start time, our label, our input date. Yeah, this one here.
Yep. So the what we need to do here is, okay, you see how after you were doing bind value new meeting start time, which is essentially saying that this value is bound to the class instance's start time. When somebody let's see, what we want to do is yeah, that's a good place to do it, is we want to say copy bind value, but then put a colon. So basically @ bind value, and we'll see if it helps us with this. After, there it is. So bind value after, although bind got doubled there for some reason.
Yeah.
You put a method name here, and we could just call it like update end time or something. And so, yeah, in quotes, you put a method name. And what we're basically saying here, and so here's a feature of Blazor, if you're new to Blazor, is to say when somebody, and you saw how bind value had all kinds of different events that you can pay attention to. We're using after, but there was hover and all kinds of other things. So
wondering if that's an existing method or not.
No, it's not. It's just helping you.
Okay.
But let's change it though. Actually, no, I think you're right. That is an existing member. So let's just call it like update end time or something like that. And so now we need to go add that method. And
So like this?
Yeah, that'll work.
Cool.
Let's see what it does.
So it's just control or command period, and then we get the little pop up, and we get the action, and then I should be able to now do F12, and I get the new
Yeah,
method. There
okay.
we go.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah, perfect. And this is going to be real simple. This is just new meeting.end time, because that's our current, like the current new meeting time, right? Is we're setting it. And I think new meeting for us has a capital M, I'm pretty sure.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah, it's got it. And now it's just equal to the start time that we just set. So new meeting dot start time. And then let's see, that's a date time. So we can say add hours. And you could make it like 2 or something. And so the idea here, and I'll just tell you, this was a point of frustration for me, is I would go set the start date and time and be like, oh, now I got to go set the date and the time on the other end, and it'll just boom, do it. Now, I still think that the UI itself could probably be better, but at least just that little quality of life change when you go and enter a new meeting, I think that should be it. Like, that's why I was going to say, like, this is pretty simple. But what we are able to show here, and I don't know that a lot of times we get to this stuff, because like we build something in Blazor and then to say like, listen, we have all the same features that a front end developer has to interactively deal with the UI based on events, just like you would in any other component based framework. It's just that I was just excited because it was like, we haven't done a lot of, here we are building a Blazor app, and we haven't actually done a lot of Blazor.
Right.
So
yeah, we're doing the behind, we're doing the plumbing and the
right
back end work.
So if you run this, and I think I'm right about that, watch it blow up on me. And then if it blows up on me, then I guess it's vibe coding forever. But
that's right.
Because clearly the new AI coding overlords are here, and I just need to submit. But but I think we're okay. So and that's just a quick demo of in your controls, you have the ability, besides data binding, which is pretty cool, you also have the ability to bind to events, what we would think of as browser events on the control. So watch, let's find it. Here we go. This is the big test. I'm also glad that we don't have like a B unit test to test it for us. So like, let's see what happens when Rich sets a new meeting time here. It's going to start at 8 p.m. And
then click off.
And over on the right, we are 2 hours away. Woo! So awesome. My thinking is again, part of this whole administrative feature set is you put what your standard meeting time is, and it can just do it for you.
Yeah.
So
actually pulling in that where we go to, something like this setting here, that value would probably come from something that the group has as a default.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And so, if you're coming from a component-based framework, take your pick. You may already do things like this. It's just that you do it in either JavaScript or TypeScript, or whatever, however your framework is. I'll admit that I'm not fully aware of every web framework out there, but I feel like that's something we can do in Blazor. Now, some people love the fact that you're staying out of JavaScript. I happen to not. I don't dislike or anything about it. But what you are doing is you're staying in your environment. And I think there is value in that. I think there's value in, I'm a C# developer, I'm working in C#, can I stay in C#? Which, if I'm going to say what I think makes this compared to ASP.NET MVC or even Razor Pages, in both ASP.NET MVC and Razor Pages, this is just a modern reality of the world. You are not, I think it's going to be very hard to get away with building an app today without any front-end client interactivity. Sure, you could probably build a lot of apps that are just read and look at, but I would submit that if you're doing that, maybe you just want to use a content management system. which is great, right? Then you don't own any code. That's fantastic. Maybe you just want to use something like Jekyll, which is just a template based. I would call it blogging, but it's more of just a template based page creation tool. Yeah.
It's got some pretty interesting frameworks for being able to iterate over that collection of content, right? All interesting things like that, and tagging and the header metadata that exists, right? So it's a way of, it is, if you see the by default, if you see things on Google Pages, or not Google Pages, GitHub Pages, it uses Jekyll by default, so that you can bring any static page generator you want.
Yeah, there you go. Static site generator. See, that's it's not a Monday, but for some reason my brain's acting like one. So you could use any static site generator. The moment you've decided to step in as a developer is probably because you need some interactivity. And if you are comfortable and love .NET, then I do think there's value in maybe we can spend more time there, instead of having to context shift out to, well, this is the front end and it's TypeScript and whatever your team is using. So in any case, all right, little thing. So what do we have next? We were able to, when we added the meeting with those things, we should see those, even though they're not showing up in our front end meeting component, we should see them if we make an API call or look in Data Explorer.
Well, we didn't save that last meeting. We just kind of,
well, not the last one, the one before though, where you did add keywords and location, right?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So
we do have a meeting that exists that is using those values. In fact, I guess your first meeting you use them too. Oh, maybe not. They're just not filled. Okay. Yep.
All right. But they're empty. But you go to this one.
Great. Awesome.
And now you've got. Yep. And
so now I think, can we display that?
That would be the full circle effect, right?
Yeah. And so we do have, this is where we're, a little bit better. We actually have in the display, we do have a component. This is not a component yet, probably something to work on. But we do have a component here for displaying meetings. It's probably sitting in components. Organization of our project is something else we'll have to look at. But here it could be, okay, we bring the meeting in and we could make the decision to show, we can add like even just location real quick, and whether you want to do it or
just trying to get description there, and then we can let's see, it doesn't have its own div class. And are we just we're basically just taking that, and well, that's paragraph one. I'm trying to look for, I suppose it could just be in the meeting ID. Yeah, we could just do,
I think it could very much be like, it could be very similar to that, where if the location is not null or empty, then show it, or you can just show it, like it doesn't matter.
You could just show it. Yeah, I'm just gonna try and show it. So I forgot it's at meeting dot location.
Yeah, so let's make sure.
We probably need
let's use the Elvis operator which is the question mark. Yeah, it's just in case meeting is null, which I still think Blazor's pretty resilient to, but let's not. And then if you want to say something like location in front of it, or if you don't, it's fine too. It doesn't matter.
I do. That's a good point. All right, so we get the location and get that.
Yeah.
It's probably not gonna, right? Because what we were talking about of it being, yeah. So I probably got to redeploy. Says you're back.
Yeah, it finally dropped in.
Okay, here we go. Meetings. We have
All right. Yep.
Because
Because we don't have it
one
for
has one.
one of them. Yep.
We don't have an edit button either.
We don't.
But that's okay. Cool. All right.
Oops. All right, so that's this location, and then we're also getting a keywords array, right?
Yes. So we need to get that in there too.
Yep. And I think it might be interesting. Like if you want to, you could say with this page with the meetings. I wonder how long it would take though. With the meetings component raiser as context, if we said, can you add the keywords array, or do we just want to do it real quick?
No, I think a keywords array makes sense, right? And maybe have some kind of a interesting way of displaying that content, almost like if it's in its own little bubble, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now the reality is that I'm not. I bet you this exists, and there are so many great Blazor component libraries that probably have this built in already, instead of us trying to reinvent it, or anyways, we'll see.
Drops that down onto the. Well, that's fine. We can do that. We want to do something that is a for each, right? So it's at for each. Give me the IntelliSense, okay? At for each. Sorry, var. We're going to do a div with some kind of a class of. Did we roll our own CSS for this, or would you have some kind of a CSS library included?
That's a great question. Let's see.
Looks like we just have ours.
Yeah, we don't have like a full CSS library or.
So we could do that for now, so that at least gets put in there under its own bit of stuff. And then at word, for lack of a better thing, let's just put a little. Didn't like that.
Yeah, I agree that there's some interest. Well, anyways, so I don't know. Let's see. So keywords. I wonder if keywords could be null, or if it will at least be an empty array. I think it'll be empty, but it's warning us about that. We can come back and look at that later, I think. But
okay.
that may be good enough. That may work.
I think so. All right, let's do that. Reset.
So again, if you're totally new to Blazor, what you're seeing here is that, but you're not, let's say you're not new to ASP.NET, then I think for a very long time, we've had Razor syntax, which lets us sort of shift out to C# and then shift back in to HTML markup. And that's basically what you've done there. And so it picked up the keywords. Yeah.
Yes, but the way it did it, it gave it each its own line, because each.
Right. Which, look, it could be
I know.
that div class, it's not what you wanted. So
Right.
now the fun begins of being a front end developer.
Yes. So, okay. Well, let's just highlight this section.
Okay.
And do this. As the last little trick before we kind of wrap up and get out of here. Let's see. Hang on.
Right.
Hey, Copilot. On this Razor page, I've got some highlighted text for the keywords. I want it so that it displays as a label of keyword, colon, at the beginning, and then on the same line, continuing where each word has its own formatting, so it almost looks like a shaded area separated as it goes across. Let's see what that does.
Good luck, Copilot. Let's see what it wants to do here.
So it's got two things, right? It's got its meeting class.
Yeah.
So it's got to update the CSS as well. There we go.
So look what it did. It went ahead and made the improvement I was thinking about of checking whether or not keywords was null.
Nice.
It went ahead and said, yeah, you guys, you know what? What are you're killing me here. You're trying to blow up the web app. Now, I feel like what it decided to do was to say the div keyword container is being line breaked. And so instead it switched to span. Now, again, I think probably the div itself, I'm curious if the div itself is where we can do some CSS modification. I don't know if it did. Oh, it is looking at meeting component Razor CSS, but I don't know what it wanted to do.
Well, that should have put we can look at it because it's here.
Right. So now here's the question. Here's the question people may not know is if you look under components in the components folder, you're going to see meeting component razor.css is a file, a separate file right alongside the component.
Yeah, there's meeting component here, .razor, and then meeting component .razor.css.
Right.
With some background color and some bordering. So let's see what it does. Let's reset that.
And so while that's running and while you're working on it, I want to point out now you might be looking at that. Let's say you're brand new to Blazor, or even if you aren't super brand new to Blazor, what the heck is that? Why does the Razor component seem to have its own CSS file? That's a feature called CSS isolation.
Oh.
So what you do is by default, if you create a CSS file with the same name as a component in the same folder, then what that CSS file is now what is referred to as a scoped CSS file. So it means that you can define styles in there that are only applied to the output of that component. And it kind of lets you have a method to avoid the common CSS problem of trying to decide how to cascade your CSS is just as complicated as CSS itself. And it can get really crazy to where you start saying like, well, wait a second, I don't know where that style came from. And you're trying to figure out which file it came from or whatever. So the CSS isolation strategy can be really useful. And it looks like that's what Copilot did here. So I see, yeah, all of these, yep, you're right. All of these styles are sitting here in the CSS isolation, in the scoped CSS file.
Right. So because it's scoped, we could have keyword dash label mean something here and keyword label in another do something else.
Right. It means something somewhere else. Now let's see what it did. Oh, wow. Yeah. So it kind of, I think that's what you were essentially looking for. Is it was able to say, okay, I know what you want. You want like what everybody else does, where they put it in a different. They make them feel like they're their own bubbles or something, and perhaps in the future we'll have it I see it all the time on sites, the little X so that you can get rid of a keyword, but we don't need that unless we're in edit mode.
Exactly. Exactly. Cool. Ship it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was nice. We added those pieces in. I know it seems like a little slow going, but we did it in a short amount of time. Some of it manually, some of it with the aid of GitHub Copilot Chat's agent mode. And we also got to talk about a few Blazor features too. So that was nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff to chat about on a Friday for sure. So what I'm going to do is let's go back to, is it here? Got a good status. We got a bunch of objects there. Let's go ahead and get add.
We'll get some tags on this for where we started. And so that if anybody wants to get the code exactly where we're at, whether you're watching this video now or far in the future, I will work to get some tags on the repo with today's date and get that into the show notes below. There's some other things I got to do too, like the link to. I think I'll go ahead and bring this up so that I can show this before we go. But the bit.ly link I was talking about. I'm going to show this on the screen, and this is completely not helpful because who wants to type this out? So if you're watching on YouTube, then just head down to the show notes where you'll see the link to our notes on the GitHub Copilot camp. And
do we want to put the tags in here?
I'm sorry?
Do we want to put the tag in here for post show?
We can add them. We can add them after.
After? Okay.
Yeah, I can tag the commits later.
Cool. Then I would do that, and then I would do git push.
And I'm going to show real quick. So the bit.ly link that you'll see in the show notes, and it's also right here, of bit.ly PDN for Philly.net, 25 for the year. The meetup was on the 25th of June, so that's where all that comes from. 250625. When we did this event, this helps you. If you don't have Copilot for Visual Studio Code, you can activate the free account. The lab materials, I'm going to go ahead and open this in a new tab so we can look at it, are all here at the GitHub Copilot Global Bootcamp. And there was no way to go through all of this in two and a half hours. It couldn't be done.
Yeah.
So besides the fact that we ran through this content, if I actually say go to Hands-On Labs, this link here, which I'll open in yet a new tab, we will get a long series of labs, which we did not do. I think we even talked. Oh, you know what's happening is we're not seeing the tab.
Yeah.
Let me share that again. I shared it incorrectly. That's my fault. I shared the tab instead of sharing the window. Okay, so let's do that again. Sorry about that. This is our link to our notes from the Philly.net in-person meetup. I showed here that you could get GitHub Copilot for free with Visual Studio Code. And then here, this will take you out to Microsoft's repository for the GitHub Copilot Global Bootcamp, which looks like this. And then if you scroll down a little bit and go to Hands-On Labs, I clicked there. That took me here. And these labs cover a lot of different things. They cover, using advanced features, using JavaScript, Python, generating documentation, different use cases. And, if I remember correctly, I want to say that we started on this one, building applications with GitHub Copilot agent mode. I think that's the one we started on as a group. But there's all kinds of notes for everything we did, including talking about Copilot, talking about code spaces. Here we go, right? Code spaces examples.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about, you very briefly mentioned dev containers, so I went and I grabbed a blog post link to it.
Oh, cool.
And then Jeff Fritz briefly discussed his Copilot That John site. which is a site that he built using Copilot, and in some respects, and it's about using Copilot. So in some respects, he kind of just asked it to help him build this over a series of channels. If you're not familiar with Jeff Fritz, he streams on Twitch and YouTube. And he also wanted to note that there are 2 workshops coming up that he's running on these channels. July 18th, adding AI to .NET applications, and July 25th, a .NET Aspire workshop. So those are coming up. And then, like, Rob did the hands-on labs. So there's even a lot of content just here.
That's awesome.
So don't forget to check that out.
Like that.
All right. A little bit of a blur, but hopefully that was helpful. And I'm hoping this leads us to some acceleration in the app.
Yeah.
So
yeah, now that I think there are some of those things behind the scenes we'll do and just kind of catch people up and focus on some of the things we might want to dive a little deeper on stream. But I think we want to get some momentum going and get this application going. Hey, it is out there in the public. There are public issues associated with that project. If you want to contribute, grab an issue, do a pull request, and who knows, may wind up in the main part of the project there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I know you have to get running. I do too. It's a little past 9 here on the U.S. East Coast. Everybody have a great day. I hope the heat wave's over for everybody here in the U.S. I don't know that it is, but I know that we had a significant drop. But no matter where you are in the world, I hope you have a great day. And thank you so much for joining us, whether it's now or in the future. And if it is in the future, then maybe let us know who won the Stanley Cup in 2026 or something like that. But it's always great to see everybody. And don't forget, all of our shows are available on YouTube at youtube.com/The Dev Talk Show. And so I think that's it. Have a great weekend.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that we think the earliest we can be back is Wednesday. Is that right? It is for me.
Wednesday together.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But we'll see about continuing on in the app before then. So for Rich, I'm Chris. And we will see you all next time on The Dev Talk Show.